All right, it's Saturday evening. I have a lot of stuff I'm going to get posted. Just I'm not going to get it all up tonight, but I'm hoping maybe I'll get this up tonight. This is going to be just my second episode, as it were, I guess, in a series where I just discuss people that just struck me as being really good, genuine people, like just extraordinary people who I've just happened to meet, that or people you may have heard of or you should have heard of if you have any interest at all in bodybuilding or fitness even. Um, Robert Kennedy. Robert Kennedy and Johnny Fitness. These two guys were just really just genuine, normal, regular guys. And the thing that really struck me about them was the authenticity that they carried in their continence. They were clearly just really passionate about the whole thing, about the bodybuilding, the working out, seeing other people accomplish their fitness goals. Uh, it was truly a work of passion and love, a labor of love for Mr. Kennedy. And it struck me that Johnny Fitness was every bit as genuine. His buddy and longtime friend, best friend, I guess, his mate, they were schoolmates together, like way, way back. So they were together all their lives, best buddies. So it must have been really, really hard for Johnny Fitness to see his friend suddenly diagnosed, with cancer in 2012 and pass away within just a matter of months after that. It has to have been really, really hard on him. And my sympathies to him and Robert Kennedy's lovely wife, Tosca. Because when I met Robert Kennedy, he was with his wife. And it was in Las Vegas. It was at the Bellagio Hotel. It was probably '05. It could have been '06, but I think it was 2005. And it was a bodybuilding show that I was doing in Vegas. It was an amateur show. My reasoning was just that if your intention is that you really are going to take a shot at it and see where you fall in the pecking order, if you have a shot, maybe competing amongst the pros or whatever, then my opinion, this is my opinion, you're entitled to your own, and everyone's just as genuine, to them. It's a very subjective thing. But my idea is that I wanted to get out and have the experience of competing at a huge venue, with all the bells and whistles and bright lights and a larger spectacle than you would get at your normal state level NPC show. And by going to Vegas, by traveling out to Vegas, now I have to deal with flying out. We have to make all the arrangements. We have to go through all this other stuff. But to see how it affect me conditioning wise and the whole nine yards, you just learn all these things now, early on. And you get over that stage, that fear, because you're put out on a stage that looks like, you see the stage beforehand and you're expecting U2 or somebody's going to play there. I mean, that's how fantastical the whole thing is. The whole production is just huge, enormous. And when you get the lights are so bright, you can't even see the first row. You can't see anybody, So I wanted to have that experience because if I'm going to continue on, I want to get these learning phases, these lessons out of the way early on and see where some stumbling blocks might be and what I need to work on all the way around, the big picture, so that if I did have a shot to go on and do something even larger, it wouldn't all of a sudden be thrust upon me like I'm, fish out of water. You understand what I'm saying? Trying to get these other experiences alongside, not just for the sake of the show and the conditioning and all, but to be placed out there on a bigger stage, bigger spectacle, et cetera, et cetera. And the contacts you can make, get your name out there a little bit earlier. So I went out to Vegas to do the show. It was at the Bellagio Hotel. And we're walking around the hotel, and casino, part of the casino. And there's Robert Kennedy with his wife. And he's just struck such a, just imposing, but not in a putting off way. just in the way that he carried himself, so dignified is the word. Just such a dignified gentleman that you couldn't help but notice him. He stood out in a room, even in a crowded room, even if you didn't know who he was. Just his appearance, the way he carried himself, the whole 9 yards, the way he conducted himself. And to me, it was a big deal because when I first started lifting weights, before I ever even knew I would ever get into bodybuilding, the first weight set I had was just a small, like 110-pound, steel set with a 1-inch hole and a small bar. And it was, it had in it a pamphlet that unfolded, and it had basic weightlifting instructions. Nothing like bodybuilding, but literally weightlifting instructions with old school lifts like the Jefferson lift and things of this nature. And it was by Bob Hoffman, who's another real old timer, big name, formative name in the entire weightlifting game. And that was, what I cut my teeth on. Those were the first exercises that I had as an example of what I needed to do to try to handle these weights and make them into a tool that could produce some kind of desired effect on my body to where I didn't look so small anymore, so skinny and thin. I could put a little bit of muscle on. I never set out to look like this. It's just one thing led to another, year after year, and this is what happens. And I never really expected that I could gain this much muscle. I didn't know. You don't know when you start out, and nobody can look at you and tell you either. Some of the skinniest guys, the smallest, slightest guys that you could find, you can't look at that guy and say, no matter who you are, you can't look at that guy and say, he can't get big. It's just like you look at a really big guy, naturally just a big, bulky type of guy, brawny guy, and you think, oh, he'd be an awesome bodybuilder. And in both cases, you could be wrong. That littler guy, he may just explode and just have all the genetics in the world once the stimulus is there and he starts to actually eat something. Whereas the other guy, he may never get far beyond what he already appears to be. So you can never look at somebody and tell. And that's the other interesting thing and the really challenging thing. It's a great equalizer because when you take on something like this, you start working out with the weights, you don't know where it will lead. It's unpredictable. You set your own boundaries. No one can limit you and say, you're only going to make it this far, that far. You really don't know what's going to happen. And what lies within you, is not yet revealed until you actually begin to mold things and build things. And then you can be quite surprised. So the second place I learned any exercises from was Muscle Mag International. Muscle Mag International was one of a multitude of magazines like Reps and Oxygen, and I don't even know how many other ones, maybe 4 to 6 magazines that Mr. Kennedy, Robert Kennedy Publishing, produced on a monthly basis. Robert Kennedy was editor-in-chief, and he was very active in the magazine, every magazine. And in the middle of the magazine, always in the centerfold of the magazine, there would be 3, 4, 5, 6 pages sometimes that were almost like comic book type of material, unlike the rest of the magazine, which was, that more glossy photographic type of magazine paper you would expect to see. And in those 4, 5, 6 pages, he would pick a body part and he would show you all the different exercises and proper way to do these things at bodybuilding type of workouts. So that was really very, very useful for me. And later I found out that the drawings, all of those drawings were done by his hand. He did all these drawings himself. So he can get the form exactly as he wants it. It's not like you're trying to reproduce something and capture it in a picture of the live specimen, the human, a live human being model. So he could actually draw exactly what he meant and intended and very well explain the motions and movements and the exercises. So I looked forward to that every month. We didn't have any internet or any of this stuff, and I didn't know anybody that really worked out, that lifted weights like that, enough that they could share any knowledge with me. There wasn't any place to go nearby to ask anyone like that. So that's where I learned everything I knew in the beginning. That first little pamphlet, brochure basically, by Bob Hoffman got me started. But these were just old school, almost just weightlifter type exercises that you hardly even see anybody do today. I never see anybody in the gym doing like a Jefferson lift. When I moved into the Muscle Mag, then I got, the instruction right at Robert Kennedy's hands, Mr. Kennedy's hands, and that was really revealing and informative for me. And I learned a lot, and I really made good progress. I started to begin to make my progress then and there. So this guy, by now that I am seeing him in the flesh for the first time, I've been working out for, I don't know, a long time, 20 years. So I've gone from being this little thin guy, to being this behemoth. I mean, at the time I was probably, I think that show I actually dieted down so lean that I came in just under the super heavy cutoff. And I did that strategically because the year before there had been like 16 super heavies. And so I figured that's going to be really a competitive class. For me, this being my first real NPC show, and it's a big show out in Vegas, people literally come from all over the world to compete in this show, or they did at that time. I'm sure they probably still do. There were guys there from Europe and every other thing. So it's a tough crowd. It's not like very easy pickings. And that's part of why I picked that show to do. So I decided that I'm probably wisest to try and get down to heavyweight, to try and come in 224-ish or whatever, and just come in under the line and make it as a heavyweight, because it won't be such stiff competition, because the year before I had like 16. Well, much to my chagrin, I get there and find out there's no super heavies that year. I would have been down to super heavy. Win's a win. But I did come in the best condition I probably have ever had was then and there. So I'm walking around and I see Robert Kennedy. And I'm like, my God, this is so amazing. I just have to speak to this man and tell him what an immense motivation he has been to me in my pursuit, and the dramatic transformation I've made, with which I have to credit him with a whole lot of it, all the inspiration and the instruction and every other thing, in those formative beginning couple of years, from nothing to where I actually knew something about what I was trying to do and how to actually go about it. So, I was like, I don't get excited about people. There's a lot of people that you would consider celebrities and, icon status. Not talking about the bodybuilding world. I'm talking about just literally movie stars and things like that I've had an opportunity to meet. I've never asked anybody for an autograph. I've never seen the sense in it. And I've never fawned over anybody or just treat everybody like a normal person. I don't go out of my way to crowd somebody to speak to them just because I happen to see them. I don't have to speak to them, if there's a whole lot of people already bothering them or whatever. But Mr. Kennedy was probably the person I was most excited about getting to meet. That was somebody I really wanted to meet. So when I approached him in the casino, he was with his wife, I said, Mr. Kennedy, I've got to talk to you a minute. And I went in to explain to him, who I was and what I was doing there, and what an inspiration, what a huge inspiration he had been to me. And that, if it hadn't been for him and, those drawings in his magazine, I would have been floundering for who knows how long. I may not have even gotten to where I had gotten yet. Who the hell knows? And I don't know. I kind of walked away thinking that maybe I had overwhelmed him a little bit. I'm not sure. He seemed like a very modest guy, a very respectful guy, a real true gentleman. But over the course of the next 2 days or whatever that I was there, I happened to run into him several times. It was almost as if I was stalking him, which I wasn't. We would go to eat. It would turn out there's where he was eating. We would go over here. It turns out there he is. So we just acknowledge, wave. He'd nod to me and wave, very friendly, cordial. But I didn't want to keep bothering him. But I almost felt like, geez, Robert Kennedy's got to think I'm stalking him or something. This is messed up. But when the show came, I go to the show to weigh in. And Johnny Fitness was there. And he came over and he said, and I had been spray tanned and all that, I think just after that. So I start to, I'm getting ready to take my clothes off to weigh in with everybody else. And Johnny Fitness comes over. I didn't know who he was at the time. I knew the name. I hadn't seen the face, And he came over to me and he told me who he was, introduced himself. He said, you're Jim Vest, right? I said, yes, yes, I am. And he said, Mr. Kennedy told me that no matter what else I do here, to make certain, no matter what, that I get some pictures of you when you weigh in. And, to be quite honest, all bullshit aside, to be honest, I was a favorite to win the show. I had been, I knew I was in shape, and I was showing it off. I was walking around the whole time I was there with these real stretchy USA Muscle shirts that just cling to everything. They're like really, really stretchy. I don't even have any anymore, but back in the day, it's what everybody used to wear when you were in shape. And you could like see my abs through it and every other thing. It was really crazy. So everybody had me, everybody was, approaching me and telling me, oh man, who are you? Where are you from? You're going to walk away with this today, all this stuff. And so he came up and talked to me. He said, can you come next door if you would please when you're finished here so I can get some pictures. So I was like, yeah, sure, because I was very flattered. Well, when I went to weigh in, I had an argument with one of the judges. I believe he was probably the head judge there. And that kind of sunk my chances for the show. And then I suddenly came in sixth. And I have pictures of like guys that placed like two places ahead of me, next to me. And literally, it's the best condition I've ever had. And I was just, no bullshit. I mean, everybody says this. Everybody cries sour grapes, right? My first pro show, I placed probably 20th or 21st or something, if you're counting that far down. And I deserved that. I can't argue about that. I blew it at the end. I looked like total shit. I was puffy, spilled over like a big dog, looked absolutely horrible, like a big waterlog. And I deserved that. But this show, no. I was spot on, just totally vascular, shredded, striations all over my quads and all over everywhere. I was right on the money. I don't think I could look much better, And so after my little tete-a-tete with the judge, that kind of soured things for me. And, I knew that I had blown that. But when I went next door, with Johnny Fitness, he shot a bunch of pictures, which I don't even know what became of those pictures. And he said to me, I'm not blowing smoke. I got to tell you the truth. I've photographed over 3,000 bodybuilders in my time, both professional and amateur. And I got to tell you that those are the biggest arms I've ever seen in that condition. No bullshit. Now, this is what he told me. I'm not just trying to ring my own bell. This is what he told me. And I thought that was pretty awesome. So that's pretty much my story about Robert Kennedy. I think he was, and then after that, I ended up, going and doing a pro qualifier and turning pro and doing one pro show. And that's nothing for me to brag about because, of course, the way I blew that. But Robert Kennedy, Mr. Kennedy, I was in every other muscle mag for 2 years after that. Every other muscle mag, every other issue, I was in there. And then years later, probably 2009, I was in the muscle mag again just because I happened to bump into Tony Machinsky, who was a photographer for Muscle Mag. And we were at Strong and Shapely, Bob Bonham's gym in Rutherford, New Jersey. And he took a picture of me, and I didn't look really great. But Mr. Kennedy put it in the editor's page, and he put something on there, some kind of line underneath of it, like Jim Vest still looking massive or whatever, the consummate gentleman here at Strong and Shapely, whatever it was. But it was just very, very nice. Mr. Kennedy, Robert Kennedy was just, I think as far as the bodybuilding world goes, the fitness industry goes, that was the most genuine guy that I've ever met. Was Robert Kennedy and Johnny Fitness. Those two guys were the most genuine articles, just gentlemen. Robert Kennedy, what a consummate gentleman. And they truly, I firmly know that those guys did it with a love and a passion. It wasn't about the money. I mean, when they first started Muscle Mag, maybe 74, I'm not sure. But Robert Kennedy had pulled out he only had a few $100s in the bank. It was all he had in the world. He left teaching job. He was teaching English and art, I believe, in England, and he left the job, drew all that money out of the bank, and that's what he first started the first issue of Muscle Mag with. And they sat down and cut and clipped, all night into the late early morning hours to piece together, cobble together this new magazine that ended up, blowing up huge. And there were several more after that he produced, published. He wrote, I don't know how many books, lots of books, 50-some books. He's credited widely with being the guy that pioneered and came up with the pre-exhaust principle. Pre-exhaustion, which we all know, no one doesn't know about pre-exhaustion. Pretty much it's a staple, and he is widely credited with having been the first guy to actually commit that to paper and say, this is, what this is, and, a pre-exhaustion technique or approach. He was also a world-renowned artist under a pseudonym. He took his father's name, which I believe was Wolfgang Cow. And still to this day, his art is highly sought after. You can Google and see some of it. It's oil paintings and collected worldwide. So he was a multi-talented guy. He was just a good guy. He and Johnny Fitness started training together. I don't know when it was, but they were just kids, because Robert Kennedy, it's reported that he didn't want to be the scrawny guy anymore, with these scrawny, long, thin limbs. He was kind of a tall fellow. And so they made homemade weights with cookie tins and concrete and broomsticks. And that's what they first started working out with, and they trained together like that. That's passion. That's really, really training. That's real, true training. That's real bodybuilding. That's the real deal. It doesn't get much more genuine than that. So, huge loss to the entire fitness community, world of bodybuilding, whatever you want to call it, to encompass all of these things. Just a huge loss to planet Earth when you lose a guy like that, a real guy that the fame, the fortune, none of this corrupted this guy or changed this guy. This guy was still, just like a regular guy when you met him. Just such a good guy. He didn't have to do the things that he did. He just went out of his way for people like he did for me. Nobody, So I was very, very sad to hear of his passing. Anyway, that's my story. Robert Kennedy and his buddy Johnny Fitness. And if Johnny happens to see this somewhere or hears of this along the ways, man, it would be awesome if you would contact me. Email me through the website at gorillawiththecause. What is it? Gorillawiththecause at gmail.com. And remember, gorilla is GUERRILLA with the calls at gmail.com. And any of you guys can email me, of course. I'm a little slow with responding, but I will get to them all. That's it for now. Robert Kennedy was an awesome man. Johnny Fitness, if you catch wind of this somehow or another, man, it would be awesome if you get in touch with me. I'd just like to, after all this time, just say thanks and, just discuss a few things. That's all. Shoot the shit, as it were. All right, have a good evening, and I'll catch up with you guys again tomorrow.